Kennison.
So, my semester teaching, my first full year of teaching, it ended this week. And what I like to do is I like to force my students to have an individual conference with me. And it's interesting to hear the answers of some students and the brutal honesty about how they've done in the class. Because I always ask them the question, if you had to grade yourself, what grade would you give and why? And they always hate it. One of the questions I actually asked them though is, if you could go back in time and you actually tell yourself that you needed to do something at the beginning of the quarter or the beginning of the semester, what would it be? And all the time it's the same thing, time management. Always. All my students coming into my English classes, English 100, they know what to do. Rarely do they ever do it though. And we talk about this throughout the quarter. Sometimes I don't ask them to write that much. It's like 5 pages sometimes. But coming out of high school or coming back to college after a long time, people are like, 5 pages, how am I gonna do that? And so I tell them a story. There was a writer once, and she had a little brother. This is when she was younger and he was younger. And he had to do a project. I might have told this story before, but I'll tell it anyways. He had to do a project about birds. It was a summer project. And so he did what all good elementary school students do when it comes to summer projects. He waited until the night before it was due to start it.
Nice.
And it was like a 50 bird project, right? So he's sitting there at the kitchen table. It was probably started a few days before. And he was just bawling, just like a couple days the night before it's due. And his dad walks in. His dad was a writer. And he says, "What's the problem, son?" And the kid's just bawling. He's like, "I have this project, and I have all these birds to do, and there's so much, and I don't know how to do it, and I'm not gonna get it done." His dad says like, "Whoa, hey, calm down. All you gotta do is do it bird by bird. Just take it bird by bird." And so I tell a lot of my students that. I'm like, listen, if you have a 5-page paper, it's actually not a 5-page paper. It's 5 one-page papers. Or if it's a 20-page paper, it's not a 20-page paper. It's 3 6s and a 2. Or it's 6 3s and a 2. And I tell them that it's actually breaking up the project into smaller steps and smaller bits that are much more manageable. And sometimes I think when it comes to life, a lot of the times we look at people who have, who we envy, or I don't want to say envy, but who we look at and say, wow, they seem to have it all together. It must be magic. I could never do that. But the truth of the matter is the only reason that's happened most of the time is because they've just done it bird by bird and lived their life step by step and not seeing it as this huge thing that's out of control.
We've been talking about what on earth are we here for, and so we're trying to take all of these studies that we've kind of done over the last 6 weeks and give like a practical way to kind of move forward. One thing I don't like about doing a lot of studies in a series is I personally don't remember what I've taught. You know what I mean? And like for me, the biggest thing in life is takeaway. Like, how do I get from where I'm at to where I'm going? And I think that's what Chris was illustrating in that idea or that story, that if I'm going to get from point A to point B, maybe I can't make it in one big step. Like if Wendy is where I need to get, at my age, carrying this much of a child right now, there's no way in one step I can get to Wendy. I might be able to get there in 4 steps, large steps, probably more like 8 steps to get to that particular destination, if I don't trip or get myself burned going by the fire pit. But that's kind of what life is. It's a journey. It's a matter of steps to get from where you're at to where you're going. These camps, man, it was pretty nostalgic last night. It was pretty cool sitting around listening to all the stories and listening to people share. I mean, there's obviously a lot of stuff at a camp like that we can't share around a fire pit, right? You know, some of the crazy stuff that goes on in camp. But camps don't just happen. Environments where community gets together doesn't just happen. This camp started, for me, 3 weeks ago, trying to figure out what we need to get, what I need to buy. We have like 2 of these Easy Ups, these white ones right here. So I think I got Preston and Emily to kind of dig this Easy Up out that we had at the church, and it was the one that was our brand new one, like really nice one. And they pulled it out, and it was bent and twisted and trashed. Somebody borrowed that Easy Up, totally trashed it, brought it back, didn't even put it back in its bag, put it in there, and it was destroyed. You know what I mean? It was absolutely destroyed. We let anybody borrow anything. We don't care. You can borrow anything, but if you're going to destroy it, at least let us know. I remember one time, Alan's got this awesome camera he's using right now, and we had one, and I loaned it to a kid in the youth group, and Micah's friend, David.
Yeah.
And so they went on this camera shoot, and when they were coming back, David put the camera in the bag on top of his car, and he drove off. And he realized, oh my gosh, where's the camera? And he turned around, came back, it was like a block away or so, and it was gone. It was just gone. But he told me, hey, you know what, man, the camera, it fell off the car or whatever. So my buddy who buys us all this tech stuff, I'm like, hey man, we just lost a camera. It went MIA, a guy left it on top of a car. Within a week, I had another camera. When people are honest and just open about the journey of life and what it is, God just seems to take care of things. So here I am running around. Okay, I go, how many easy ups do I need? I forget that we live in a day and age where every single one of you has an easy up. But, so I'm like, we should probably have one for that table. So I bought that blue one and then that blue one. And I'm like, we need a big one, so I bought that big one, and which I hate that thing. And taking it down today, I'll be very thankful when all of you do it for me. But camp did not just happen. You know what I mean? It takes time and effort and energy. All the stories around the fire pit, how many days and months of preparation went into each one of those events where we got together and had a crazy time for a week or went on a mission trip. I was thinking of the, not hundreds of thousands, but the millions of dollars we have spent on missions traveling around the world, going places, doing things. All of that stuff has taken a ton of time to get there. I think oftentimes Christianity gets boiled down to some kind of a formula like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live? Give me some rules and regulations. I'm a Christian, now I need to know, what am I going to do? The second thing it gets boiled down to is, I got to discover what I'm good at, discover what it is that I'm good at, figure that out, and then get on with life and get doing it. And that's great. What are the rules? What are the rituals? What are the regulations? What's my vision? What's my passion? What am I supposed to do? But I think Christianity is way, way more than that. It's way more than, how am I supposed to live? How am I going to make this decision? Robert and Ann are not going to be good parents just because we believe they're going to be good parents. I mean, I believe they're amazing parents already, right? But 40 years from now, we're going to know how amazing they were as parents, because it's going to be every day, whether or not they were saving money for retirement, whether or not they're taking care of their kids for college, whether or not they beat them when they do wrong things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And Ann's all up for that, absolutely. Yeah, she's all on it, okay? But that is not going to be an amazing family just because we believe it's going to be an amazing family. I can give them all the rules and rituals and regulations. Hey, you guys, this is how you should parent. Like, I even know how to do that, right? I let kids do whatever they want. That's how I parent. But I can't tell them how to do that. I can't say, hey, Robert, let's get down and let's plan for your future. What's it going to look like in 5 years, which I love to do with people, right? Unless a step is taken, we're simply not going to ever reach that goal. We've got to have something in front of us. So hopefully Chris and I, in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so, are going to unpack how to do that.
Sure, we could try. This is actually something we were doing a mindfulness sit down, I guess you could call it, with this guy Tim, who some of us are friends with, and Jason was actually there. And I remember when Jason was telling us, we were going through some mindfulness sits and exercises with Jason before we even worked with Tim. And I remember Jason saying something where he's like, a lot of us, we tend to live in the future. We're like, oh, I want to do this one day, and I want to do this one day, and I want to do this one day, and I just don't know how to do it. And we never really live here in the present. And Jason said something that stuck with me. Amazing that this happened, that Jason said it, but he did. He said, we actually can't get to the future unless we actually take care of the decisions today. Because again, if you, like I tell my students this too, if you're trying to get to like New York, right? You can't actually get to New York. You could think about all you want, man. I really want to get to New York. I really need to. I want to get there before I die. Well, unless you actually take a step towards New York, unless you actually take that first step, unless you actually take care of what's in front of you, you're never actually going to get there. And I remember him saying that and sticking with me. Unless you take care of today and what you have to do today and the decisions that you have to make today, it doesn't matter what you want to do tomorrow. You're never actually going to get there.
It's one of the things I've been thinking about lately is, California got this new, Super Lotto now that we're a part of. I don't know
Powerball.
Exactly. Is it Powerball?
Yeah.
That's the one we're part of. And the other day, somebody won $600 million. So I pulled out my calculator and I was like, well, what does that boil down to if he takes it over 22 years, which was 27 point something million a year, minus taxes is like 21,150,200, whatever it was, you know what I mean? And I was like, what if you had won that lottery? What if for the next 22 years, you knew that you'd have a guaranteed income of 20 plus million a year after taxes? Would your life be totally set? Now, I'm willing to struggle through that and find out whether or not that would work for me, okay? I'm willing to walk down that path. I'm willing to say, I'll give that a shot. I mean, it'll be rough, carry out. We'll have to cut back. We can't eat out all the time, you know what I mean? It's like, you probably, if you had that kind of money, you would think that a lot of your worries would be gone. Like, they would totally be behind you. People in positions of power or authority, you see somebody becomes the president of the United States, and you think, man, that kind of power, that kind of authority, I mean, what more could you want than that? And then we hear the stories of presidents over the years and all the stuff that they get into, and you're like, you're the president of the United States, and you're hung up on an intern. You're the president of the United States, and it wasn't enough. You had to have Marilyn Monroe, you know what I mean? Or whatever the stories are, right? And you kind of look back and you wonder to yourself. So I was thinking about the story of the rich young ruler. I've been reading this book, What You Do After You Believe. And the rich young ruler, that guy baffles me because every time I read his story, I'm like, what are you doing at the feet of Jesus? You should already be saying, I'm blessed. I'm rich, I'm young, I'm a ruler.
And you're a male, which at the time, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, you're a guy, back then. And it's like, man, doesn't that seem like he already arrived there? Like he kind of got to that place where now I'm completely satisfied. Now I have it all. He asked an interesting question. He asked Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Because of the context of 2,000 years, that kind of sounds like he's asking, I'm rich, I'm young, I'm a ruler, but how in the world am I going to live forever? Like, what do I need to do? I don't know if they had the vampire diaries back there, so he probably wasn't like seeking out a local vampire so he could live forever. We think in that terms, like, okay, he's got all this, but he's wondering when all of this is over, what next? The problem with that is that's not what he was asking. To ask, how might I inherit eternal life, it meant something completely different in that context. It meant, how can I be a part of the kingdom life that God is ruling and reigning and is a part of? How can I be a part of God's kingdom? How can I be a part of the kingdom that I believe the rich young ruler believed that Jesus was going to be that reigning king, possibly. And he's saying, how can I be a part of this thing? And Jesus does something really ridiculous. He says, I think you just need to sell everything and come and follow me. Now, I don't think for us to be happy, we got to get rid of all of our stuff. I don't think he's saying that. But for that particular guy, I believe that his happiness, as far as earth was concerned, was, I'm already rich, I'm young, I'm a ruler, I got everything, but I want to be a part of this exciting kingdom. And Jesus was saying, this thing is going to hold you back. This one thing is going to hold you back. Like, following Jesus means something different for all of us. For me, it meant kind of leaving the shoe repair trade and going into, preaching and teaching and doing that thing I felt that God wanted me to do. It meant leaving a very comfortable, secure income to a very uncomfortable, at times very insecure position, as far as ministry and things go. Now, I would never have at the time, if I had a wife, I had a wife, but had kids and everything and had to support a family, I wouldn't have left income to go do something. I personally wouldn't have done it. But I had freedom. So within the freedom that I had, I made particular moves and steps. At the time, there was nobody, when I was 20 or 21 years old, kind of making these decisions, there was nobody telling me, hey, Steve, take this step, take this step. But I knew if I was ever going to get into that and be a part of that thing that I believed was moving the kingdom forward, I had to take steps to do it. I had to kind of move in that particular direction. And I think for this rich young ruler, in the story that I've been reading by N.T. Wright, this guy wants to be part of God's kingdom. And it had more to do with being connected with God and the way that God was doing things. And I've been saying this in the last few studies, and then I'll let Chris chat, but this thing has been sticking out of my mind for I would say at least 6 months, maybe a year. And it keeps repeating itself. Like in the morning, I'll think about it. I'll think about it in the afternoon. Think about it in the evenings. Before I'm doing my studies, it pops into my mind. And it's that prayer that Jesus gave the disciples. And it's a particular phrase in that particular prayer that I never really focused on. Now, I haven't been meditating on this on purpose. Like, I don't have it written on my mirror, meditate on this verse. It's just kind of like, have you ever had one of those things that just gets stuck in your mind and you just keep thinking about it and you're wondering, what in the world? Why is this thing bugging me? What is it about this thing that God wants to get my attention? And then I'll turn on the radio, which I never listen to Christian radio. I listen to sports radio because that's what you do. And so on my radio, I hit the wrong button, and it was on some other channel that Jan has in her car. Some guy talking about that verse. You know what I mean? And I don't think God works that way. I mean, maybe He does work that way. Maybe I don't. I have no idea. I just know that it's been bugging the heck out of me, and I've been really thinking about it and trying to add it to all of our studies. And this kind of studies a little bit about it. But that phrase in the Lord's Prayer, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Pray that thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So whatever's going on up there or in that realm, or what I believe is in the realm of God or the way that God wants, how does that happen here? Like, camp to me, after it's set up and we start having camp, is a little bit of heaven on earth. It's fun for me to watch everybody be stupid. I love the stories. It's awesome. Packing up is hell on earth. Okay? So like I measure things by how I view them, right? Having kids, oh gosh, it was hilarious. Riley, Chris tells Riley, it was so funny. She asked Chris what his name was. What did you tell her?
Well, no, she came up to me and she said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Oh, my name's Chris." "Nice to meet you. What's your name?" "My name's Riley." Okay, train's gone now. And she's just kind of staring there, like kicking the ground. I'm like, "What is it?" She's like, "Where's Ginge?" And I said, "Ginge? Who's Ginge?" And as I said that, I heard everyone at that table over there start laughing. And I realized that was what she was calling me. That they told her to call me Ginge. And so I just rolled with it. And
she's, did you guys know who Riley is? I mean, a lot of you saw her at camp. She's so adorable. It's ridiculous. So I see her, going around and she's like, got the vocabulary of grown, better than my vocabulary, obviously. But she's so cute. But then she's all, "Where's Ginge?" And she has no idea that could be in some circles a very offensive term to call somebody, kick a ginger day, call him a ginge, whatever. But she says it in this endearing way. That's a little bit of heaven on earth, how cute she is, okay? Now, I have no idea what that will look like when she's 16, okay? I have no idea what that will look like.
There'll probably be a word in front, started with an F.
Yes, actually.
Before she says Ginge.
Yeah, exactly. Or she'll be heaven on earth for a 16-year-old boy or something, okay? But it won't be for mom and dad, right? Or in her case, mom. But heaven on earth, to me, I get certain glimpses of it. When this guy in our neighborhood, he pushes a cart around all the time, the guy with the cat. And he's got, I don't know how this cat acts like a dog, but he got it when it was just little, and he pushes it around on this cart, and he'll be sitting outside of Del Taco, and the cat's just like sitting there next to him.
He has a leash.
Sometimes he puts it on a leash when there's like traffic or whatever, and he sits out in front of Starbucks. I don't know if you've seen him. Always has his shirt off. You know what I mean?
I've seen him.
Yeah, and so I tend to give this guy, buy him coffee or buy him something to eat or whatever. And every time I see him, he lights up and he's all, "Bro, what up?" And it's like, and I know he irritates all the businesses in the area. I totally know he does. Anthony's shaking his head. Yes, he does. But there's that moment when he smiles and looks at me and he recognizes me, that a little bit of heaven has come to earth. And I think that even in this idea that we can't get from where we are to the next place, it can be a real burden on our hearts, like, okay, what next step do I take? What next step do I take? But when we translate it through a different lens, and we say, how do we bring heaven to earth? And it becomes not just a concept, but an experience within the journey. So that taking the step itself is not necessarily the goal, so that you can get to the goal. This step, this step, this step. But there's a lens to translate that through, where there's something bigger happening right at the moment. where heaven is really actually coming to earth. Like last night, I don't know if you guys thought this, but it was so weird how everybody was just sitting around the campfire like we were getting ready for a Bible study. Was that weird to anybody? Did you guys think that? I mean, it was like 2 or 3 rows deep, and I was like, what in the world what is going on? And I thought, huh?
It's natural for them to do that.
Yeah, probably so many years of, they didn't hear the horn, but they just like zombies. Something's gonna happen at this time, or whatever it was. But I don't know why, but for me at that moment, that was heaven on earth. We didn't create that moment. We didn't make that moment happen. You know what I mean? But we created an environment where that moment could happen, right? We provided a place. How many of you think I actually wanted to do this camp?
Everybody knows
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, I did not want to do this camp. And it had more to do with setup and tear down than anything else. I didn't want to deal with it, But Scott grabbed me the other day, or yesterday over there, and he goes, I know you didn't really want to do this camp. And I'm like, me? He don't want to do this camp either, And he goes, do you think it was worth it? And the first phrase that popped into my mind is, I think what we did might have brought a little bit of heaven to earth. I didn't say that to him, but that's the thing that popped into my mind. And I think when we can get attached to God's kingdom and what it's about, I think what we do becomes far more fulfilling when we're a part of that bringing heaven to earth thing. So I'm going to let Chris finish up with something. He'll figure out what that looks like.
Sure, yeah.
He has nowhere to go with this.
I have a couple thoughts that I don't know how I'm going to fit them together, but I'm going to try. A few weeks ago when I was teaching, we talked about that idea of looking at the things that Jesus values and saying, do I value those same things? And I think that sometimes, the majority of the time, I think Western or even American culture doesn't always value those things. We tend to value power, we tend to value money, we tend to value materials. Not necessarily us as human beings, but if you were to say, what is our culture known for? It's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, but no one else gets that happiness. I have to get that happiness, and usually to get my happiness, I have to take it from someone else sometimes. And recently, there's a book that I need to read. I was able to read an excerpt of it on the way. I don't know if it was on the way here or something like that. It was by Richard Branson. He's the guy that started Virgin Everything. Virgin now has an airline, and it has phones, and it has he has a private island. I don't know. He has a lot of money, and so for a lot of people, we could say that's horrible. He's not, taking care of the poor. He can give more of his money, and he does give a lot of his money. And he had actually said this. He quoted a guy who was a good friend of his who passed away, and he said, "Business doesn't exist to make a profit, or businesses shouldn't exist to make a profit. Businesses make a profit so they can exist. And what you do with that existence is actually really important." And so he is a very big advocate of making money, right? Of having a business that makes money so then you can go do things that actually change the world in a positive way. And I said to myself, yeah, I think God could get behind that. I don't think a lot of our corporations, though, do that. I think a lot of our corporations and the way that our world works, again, Western or American, is we just take as much as we can to help our friends, and we don't really have to care about anyone else. Jesus, though, he cares about the poor. He cares about the oppressed. He isn't really interested in the type of power that a lot of our corporations, politicians, even us ourselves are involved with. He just doesn't really want any of those things. And sorry, I got distracted all of a sudden. Where was I going with that? Business. Yeah. I had to look at my notes real fast. I think a lot of times, like that question, we always want to know, okay, I got the rules, or I got, I know what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, but now what? What do I do next? And I think that phrase, well, how can we bring the kingdom here? That's the question that we got to think about, because for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. What can I do today that can actually bring the kingdom here? Maybe not necessarily 5 years. Like Steve said, it's good to have a 5-year plan. But what I've begun to notice is that when I have a 5-year plan, because I used to hate plans. I used to want to be like, I want to be spontaneous. I just want to do what I want to do. But I started to realize when I have a plan for the future, it allows me to be spontaneous in the present and do the things that I want to do and actually impact the world I want to right now. Because again, we could say, in 10 years, I want to be able to give away 50% of my income to some random cause, which is an awesome, awesome idea. But if you don't actually take care of the little things the things today that bring the kingdom here, you're never going to get to that point 5-10 years down the road. And so I hope that Mile 2, as a church, I want us to be known as people who every single day we try to bring God's kingdom here just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. That's what I'm going to end with then. So